Reading and listening is the best way to become fluent fast, and that's what you'll do in this lesson. We'll read an article discussing research findings on how financial stress can impact your cardiovascular health. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started.
Our headline: financial stress may be as bad for the heart as traditional risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Now, when they talk about cardiovascular disease, they mean disease related to your heart. So the most likely illness is a heart attack, but also your blood vessels. So your heart and your blood vessels represents cardiovascular disease. So things like heart attack, stroke are the two I instantly think of. Now, financial stress, of course, this is stress related to money, paying your bills, paying your mortgage, financial stress. Maybe as bad for the heart as. This is very important, this second as, because the structure is as, adjective, as. When you're talking about equality, so you could say, this lesson is as good as your last lesson. So equality, my last lesson was 8 out of 10. This lesson is 8 out of 10, as good as. Now, what if we're not talking about equality? What if my last lesson was 8 out of 10, and then you think this lesson is 9 out of 10? What would you say? This lesson is better than your last one. Or you could talk about this one. This lesson was worse than your next one, for example. So better than, worse than. You have a comparative word, better, worse, and then you have the word than. That is when things are not equal. So inequality. Don't worry about taking these notes. I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Now let's keep reading. Worrying about money, so financial stress, worrying about money. Notice this preposition. You worry about something. Oh, I'm worried about my upcoming exam. Worrying about money. This is a gerund statement, which is why it begins with your verb in ing. It's used to make a general statement. Worrying about money may age the heart even faster than, so of course, faster is a comparative word, and we're not talking about equality here. One is higher than the other, so we use our comparative adjective structure. Even faster than traditional risk factors of cardiovascular disease. So here they're saying worrying about money, it's not equal to other factors being diet, genetics, lifestyle. So here they're suggesting that it could be higher, so even faster. But notice they use the word may. May is a modal of possibility. So it is not presented as a fact or as certainty, or else they would say worrying about money ages the heart even faster. So here, this functions as a verb, to age. Now, you most likely use it as a noun. That's how it's used in everyday context. What's your age? What's your age? So that's how you would normally use it, but here is to age. So in this case, something ages. So your heart ages. Your heart becomes older. Let's keep reading. According to. So here for the verb according to someone or something. So you have to remember this preposition. Worry about, according to. When you learn new words, make sure you learn them in context. You understand the other words required to form a grammatically correct sentence. According to a new study published in the journal Mayo Clinic proceedings. So this is the name of the journal. So this is according to something. It's very common to use a something. If you wanted to use a someone, you would focus on who wrote the study, the authors. But here they're focusing on the study itself.
Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson.
Heart disease remains the leading cause of death in the United States. So here, remember I said that cardiovascular disease refers to the heart and blood vessels. So in this case, they're just referring to the heart. So what I think of as a non-medical expert, I think of heart attacks instantly when I hear the word heart disease. And they're using the verb remain. So first, no, the leading cause of death, it means it's the number one reason why people die in the United States. Heart disease, the leading cause of death. And don't forget, with the country, the United States, you need the. It is not optional, it's required. Now they're using the verb remains instead of just saying is. Heart disease is the leading cause of death, which would be grammatically correct and logical, very common. Remains because they're letting you know that it has been the leading cause of death for quite some time. So it was in the past, it still is now. But if you just say heart disease is the leading cause of death, you may think, oh, well, that's just this year. Maybe last year it was something different. So this word remains is important. It communicates that connection to the past. And the findings raise new questions. So here, to raise a question, you probably know this because you raise many questions related to English and your English studies. I'm sure as you're reviewing this, many questions are raised in your mind, or you want to raise many questions with me. And the findings, so the findings represent the findings of the study. So if they studied, let's say 100 people, it would be the results. So what did they find when they researched, they surveyed, they did tests on those 100 people, the findings, the results. And the findings raise new questions about how financial stress related to money, people worrying about money, fits into cardiovascular health, and what people can do to protect their hearts. Here, they're using the phrasal verb fit in. You may be familiar with this phrasal verb. So let's say you have a box. I know this doesn't look like a box, but let's say this is a box. And you have, let's say your suitcase, okay? This is your suitcase, and you have these clothes, and you want to fit them in your suitcase, and you're trying to close your suitcase. So fit perfectly or not exceed the space. So the items are the correct size for the space. They're not too large for the space. So that would be the phrasal verb that you most likely use with fit in. Oh, I'm not sure if all of these items are going to fit into my suitcase. But here they're talking about how financial stress fits into cardiovascular health. So you can think of it more like you have this puzzle. Here's your cardiovascular health, and then we know diet and exercise, genetics, and you can think of them forming the picture like puzzle pieces. But how does this piece of financial stress, how does that fit in? So more like, how does it contribute? What is its role it's playing? So you always have to look to context to understand the meaning, because if you see fit in, you may instantly think of items in a suitcase. But in this context, that isn't logical. So you have to think about, okay, well, what could this word mean based on the context? Let's keep reading. I turned to CNN wellness expert Dr. Leanna Wen. So I being the author of this article, of course, I turn to. So here we have the phrasal verb to turn to someone or something. Now, if you turn to someone or something, it means you rely on that person or thing for advice or support. So many people turn to their parents for emotional support, or to their parents for financial support so they don't have to worry about money. You can turn to your friends when you're going through an issue. You can turn to your HR department if you're having a work problem. So in that case, that could be a something, HR department. Yes, of course, you're actually speaking to people, but your focus is on the thing, the department, rather than Sally, the manager of the department. You're just focused on the department. Now, this means to rely on someone or something for support or advice. So, of course, you can say, I turn to Jennifer for any questions I have about English. Does that describe you? I certainly hope it does. So put, that's right. I would love it if you turn to me for all your English needs. So put, that's right, in the comments. I turned to CNN wellness expert, Dr. Leanna Wen, to help explain. So here, notice I said I turn to Jennifer for any questions I have about English. Generally, there's a context. So I said you turn to your parents for emotional support or financial support. So there's usually the reason why, not just a general I turn to Jennifer. It's usually for a specific purpose. So in this case, the specific purpose is to help explain how financial stress can affect the heart and what steps people can take to improve their heart health and protect against that stress. So of course, the topic of this article. Now notice here, again, learning prepositions. So you protect against something. Now, sometimes in English, there are different prepositions. Sometimes they're interchangeable, other times they have slightly different meanings. Not to confuse you, but this is one of those times because you can protect against something and you can also protect from something. So the first example I thought of for a more everyday example is I put on sunscreen. Now, put is also the past simple. So it's an irregular verb. All three conjugations are put. So I could use this in the sense of a routine action. I always put on, or I could have it as a completed past action. Yesterday, I put on. Both of those are grammatically correct, okay? I put on sunscreen to protect my skin from the sun. To me, it sounds more natural to use the preposition from because the sun is the source and we use the preposition from when it's the source of something. But if you said against the sun, I would certainly understand you. And then here I put on sunscreen to protect my skin against the UV rays. Again, if you said from the UV rays, I would certainly understand you as well. There is a slight distinction though, because the UV rays, those are more the effect, and then the sun is the source that causes it. But just remember that there are two prepositions that you can use from against. If you're at a higher level, you can look into the specific nuance, but if you're not, just know I will completely understand you if you interchange these. Let's keep reading. The researchers analyzed data from over 280,000 adults. So how you read large numbers is you just take it one block at a time. So here, this is 200, right? 280. You don't need to vocalize and. 280, and then how many zeros is this? 1,000. Just remember, you do not put the S on this number, although I hear it all the time from students. 280,000 adults, because the S goes on the noun, not the number. Adults who had completed detailed surveys about the social and economic factors in their lives. So social and economic factors, this relates to one's level of standard of living based on their finances. So that's how it relates to finances. It's just the formal way of talking about your household income, your standard of living, social and economic factors in their lives, and underwent clinical evaluations. So here the verb is to undergo something. So this is when you experience something. And then, of course, the past simple of go is went. So this is the past simple, and underwent clinical evaluations of their cardiovascular health. Let's keep reading. Instead of just looking at whether people developed heart disease, the team focused on a concept called cardiovascular age. So here, age is being used in the standard way, not as the verb we learned earlier, to age. The heart ages faster if you're under financial stress. I don't know if that's true, just using it as an example. So here, this is the standard way of using it, which is the noun form. Your age, my age, cardiovascular age. So the age of your heart and blood vessels. Because remember, when they use the term cardiovascular, it's not just your heart. It's heart and blood vessels. A concept called cardiovascular age, which reflects how old, so again, standard use of the word age, how old a person's heart and blood vessels, exactly what I just said, look biologically compared with what one would expect for their actual age. Okay, so let's say you're 40, that's your actual age, you're 40, but your heart, when they do evaluations, scans, examinations, when you undergo these tests, your heart looks like it's 32. That's amazing. Or it looks like it's 52, but you're only 40. So that's what they're talking about here, and that's what they did in these tests. Let's keep reading. They found, so they being the researchers, they found that people who reported higher levels of financial stress tended to have evidence of more advanced cardiovascular aging. So your heart is aging faster than normal, faster than it should. So notice that's the comparative adjective, of course, faster than, slower than. So that would be advanced cardiovascular aging. So sometimes when you use the word advanced, it's not in a positive way. Of course, you want to reach an advanced level of English, but you don't want to reach advanced cardiovascular aging, of course. So here, let's talk about tended to. This is an important word choice. They found that people who reported higher levels of financial stress, so that could be you say, my stress is an 8 out of 10, compared to someone else who reported 5 out of 10 or 4 out of 10. So that would be how you report it. You just answered a question on a survey. Higher levels of financial stress tended to have. So here, our structure is to tend. This is a verb. As you can see, it's in the past simple. Of course, that pronunciation of the ED in this case, because the verb ends in a D, is id. Tended. Now, when we connect with this D, instead of sounding like id, this is going to sound like did. With a D. Did. Tended. So that's where you divide the sounds. Tended. 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 So our verb is tend, and then we have the infinitive, to have. And the verb tend, and then the infinitive, tend to have, tend to do, tend to go, whatever it is, it means that there's a pattern or trend. So in terms of a routine, you can think of it as usually. Now, in this case, you can think of it as generally, because they're talking about survey results. So they found that people who reported higher levels of financial stress generally have evidence of more advanced cardiovascular aging. This happens a lot of the time, but not all the time, but enough of the time that we can say there's a pattern or a trend. So it can represent the word generally or usually, depending on the context. So here's one talking about more of a routine, your routine in the present simple, where you would use usually. I tend to worry about money during the holidays, a time when people have a lot of financial stress. I tend to have financial stress during the holidays. Now, notice I gave two examples because you worry about something. So you would worry about money during the holidays. But stress is a noun. Stress is something you have. So that's why the verb is have. I tend to have, because it's the infinitive. I tend to have financial stress. So you have stress. Oh, I have so much stress right now because of that project. I tend to have financial stress during the holidays. Now, of course, tend is your verb, and in this case, it's being used in the present simple. So if you change the subject, you could say she or he tends to have. So he, or we can just say Joe tends to have with your S, because it's in the present simple. But in this case, of course, it was conjugated in the past simple, tended. Even after accounting for traditional medical risk factors. Okay, they're including this because they're saying they did account for traditional medical risk factors. So what are traditional risk factors for cardiovascular disease, heart attack, stroke? Well, lifestyle. Do you smoke? Do you exercise? What's your diet like? Genetics. Did your parents, your grandparents have cardiovascular disease? So if you account for, it means that you included that information in your analysis. So you said both of these people smoke, but this one who also has financial stress still has higher levels. So that's how you would account for traditional medical risk factors. Let's keep going. In other words, okay, so if you found that this maybe was a little complicated, you didn't quite understand, and I'm talking about a native speaker because this was written for a native speaker. So if a native speaker reads this and doesn't quite understand the significance, the meaning, the importance, in other words, and then they're going to put it more simply, not for non-native speakers. Remember, this was written for native speakers, but this is an excellent strategy. Let's say you're delivering something that's quite technical at work and there's a general audience. So not everyone has a high technical knowledge. Well, then you can deliver your technical speech information and then say in other words and explain it more simply. Explain it in easier to understand language. In other words, two people of the same chronological age, so this means the age you were born with, and with the same clinical risk profiles, could have hearts that aged at different rates, depending on how much financial stress they were under. Notice here, they were talking about strain. You could replace strain with stress, financial strain. In this context, financial stress, they were under. So to be under stress is an alternative as to have stress. It's very common to say, I'm under so much stress right now. I'm under. So remember, it's to be under. To be is what you conjugate. Here, it's in past simple and conjugated with the subject. So past simple plural. Here, it's in present simple conjugated with I. I'm under so much stress right now. Extremely common. Equally, you can say, I have so much stress right now. Let's keep reading. While the study does not prove that financial stress directly causes accelerated heart aging, so accelerated meaning your heart is aging faster than it should. Faster than it should. So here, your heart ages faster than. Age was used as a verb in that context. So accelerated heart aging, it strongly suggests. So here, you can suggest that your friend helps you move this weekend, or you can strongly suggest that your friend helps you move. So we use the word strongly if we want to make someone pay attention to our suggestion or advice or recommendation. You can use it with either one of those. It strongly suggests that the economic strain, again, they're using strain, but in this specific context, you can replace it with stress. Just know it's not as common to say, I'm under so much strain right now. You can, and I would understand you, but it is far more common to say stress. Suggests that the economic strain, stress, can affect not only mental well-being, but also cardiovascular health. Because remember, it can make your heart age faster, and that's the verb form. And that's the end of the article. So what I'll do now is I'll read the article from start to finish, and you can focus on my pronunciation. Financial stress may be as bad for the heart as traditional risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Worrying about money may age the heart even faster than traditional risk factors of cardiovascular disease, according to a new study published in the journal Mayo Clinic Proceedings. Heart disease remains the leading cause of death in the United States, and the findings raise new questions about how financial stress fits into cardiovascular health and what people can do to protect their hearts. I turned to CNN wellness expert Dr. Liana Wen to help explain how financial stress can affect the heart and what steps people can take to improve their heart health and protect against that stress. The researchers analyzed data from over 280,000 adults who had completed detailed surveys about the social and economic factors in their lives and underwent clinical evaluations of their cardiovascular health. Instead of just looking at whether people developed heart disease, the team focused on a concept called cardiovascular age, which reflects how old a person's heart and blood vessels look biologically compared with what one would expect for their actual age. They found that people who reported higher levels of financial stress tended to have evidence of more advanced cardiovascular aging, even after accounting for traditional medical risk factors. In other words, two people of the same chronological age and with the same clinical risk profiles could have hearts that aged at different rates, depending on how much financial strain they were under. While the study does not prove that financial stress directly causes accelerated heart aging, it strongly suggests that the economic strain can affect not only mental well-being, but also cardiovascular health.
Do you want to keep learning English with the news? If you do, put yes, 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 put yes, yes, yes in the comments below. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And here's another lesson I know you'll love. Watch it now.